This video is a curated list of the best books to help you on your path to financial freedom. In addition to a list, we've also included one big takeaway from reading each book over the last few years. According to a recent survey, over a third of people turn to family and friends for financial advice. Couple that with the fact that the Federal Reserve still reports that the average American family not being able to pay off their own credit cards on a monthly basis. This highlights an interesting contradiction in the fact that most turn to people for financial advice themselves have very little financial education themselves. Financial freedom books are the cornerstone of one's quest to becoming financially free. As Robert Kiyosaki famously says, you must increase your financial education. These books are big on what I'll call financial frameworks, which are ways and models on how different people think about money and finances. Here are 11 books we recommend as a baseline for your quest for financial literacy and financial freedom. I've broken them into two categories: books on finances and books on mindset. 1. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This book claims to be the #1 personal finance book of all time and was originally published in 1997. The biggest core concept in this book is that the rich don't work for money, but rather they work to acquire assets that pay for their living expenses. The poor work for money, and in turn exchange their time for money, while the rich have money work for them. Secondarily, he introduces the concept of how people who pay themselves first use their income from a job to buy those assets, which in turn fund their liabilities, aka lifestyle. 2. Rich Dad's Cashflow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. This is the second book in the Rich Dad series, and I do recommend you read this and the above one in order, as this one functions as more of a 201-level guide to financial freedom and goes into a bit of detail on the how to achieve financial freedom spectrum. The most important core concept introduced in this book is the idea of what is known a quadrant from which someone earns income from. While those categorizations are useful, most importantly each of those quadrants are taxed very differently, with the proverbial left-hand side of the quadrant, E and S, paying the most in taxes and B and I quadrants paying the least. His Poor Dad and the general education system ironically teaches people to be good employee or small business owners and as a result paying the most taxes. Contrast that with his Rich Dad, who taught him to grow himself in the B and I quadrants, which is where the rich earn their money and are not coincidentally taxed the least. 3. Why the Rich Are Getting Richer by Robert Kiyosaki. Third on this list of financial freedom books is the third one from Robert Kiyosaki, titled, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. The big concept in this book for me was how the rich use debt in order to become wealthy. There is a difference between good and bad debt, and Robert refers to borrowing money from either banks or private investors to buy assets that put cash flow in your pocket monthly. 4. Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. In Tax-Free Wealth, Tom Wheelwright delivers two core financial concepts. In order to change your tax, you need to change your facts. This means that to really cut your tax liability, you need to change how you are earning your income. Most of the tax code isn't how people will be taxed, but rather tax incentives. The government will incentivize, through taxes, behaviors that they want to have happen. 5. What I Learned Losing $1 Million by Brendan Moynihan and Jim Paul. Ironically, you'll learn a lot about investing mindset and how to invest from a journal of someone and how they lost a ton of money. What I Learned Losing $1 Million delivers the big takeaway here: to take your emotions out of investing and think through it instead. You do this before you invest a dime into something by clearly establishing your exit criteria, both good and bad, for an investment. When you are in the heat of the moment and losing money in an investment, it's hard to separate your emotions from what is best for you financially. The differences between investing and speculating are also critically laid out here. Eye-opening was the fact that most people who think they are investing are really speculating with their money. 6. The Wealthy Code by George Antoni. This book basically takes off from where Rich Dad Poor Dad ends and provides a more detailed and tactical view of wealth building. The Wealthy Code delivers the core concept of breaking down wealth into its separate components and how they tie into each other conceptually. wealth, and in return financial freedom, comes from cash flow. Cash flow comes from arbitrage, or spreads as Antony refers to it. Arbitrage comes from leverage and learning how to use other people's money, aka good debt. One of the hardest things to grasp that the author lays out clearly is arbitrage. If you borrow money at 6% and invest it at a 9% return, that creates a spread on your investment. Number 7 Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order by Ray Dalio. This is one of the more conceptual books on the list, but lays out Dalio's framework for how macroeconomics and politics comes in cycles. He put together this framework by studying the great economic powers in the world over the last 500 years. Once you know about these cycles and where we, in this case the United States, is, you can understand what is going on at the macroeconomic level and use that to your advantage. For example, he theorizes that the USA is on the decline and China is on the rise. In the context of financial freedom, this means that dollars, or cash, on hand isn't efficient. Taking that one step further, you should invest in assets that at least keep up with inflation. Number 8 Killing Sacred Cows by Garrett Gunderson. This is one of the more contrarian books on this list, but also most effective at addressing head-on some honestly destructive myths about money and financial freedom that are out there. In Killing Sacred Cows, the two biggest takeaways were that 401 kiloseconds and stocks are some of the riskiest investment vehicles that are available and makes people think in terms of a speculating mindset rather than an investment one. Also, the idea that you need to invest in high-risk financial vehicles, stocks, 401k, etc., in order to garner high returns. Contrast that with his take that reducing risk in investments will increase your returns over the long haul. Number 9 Atomic Habits by James Clear. Atomic Habits by James Clear is a must-read for those that want to improve themselves and subsequently their finances. The core concept in this book is how to position yourself for incremental improvement over time, making yourself just 1% better each day through establishing and small, hence the word atomic, habits. Through the maintenance of these and over time, by virtue of such change, you will radically change your life. Number 10 The One Thing by Gary Keller. The core concept in The One Thing is what one thing can you do today that will make things easier or unnecessary. Focus is a critical concept, and doing one thing at a time will make you more successful. Do less and have more. Think in terms of this. By doing less and applying focus to the one, or maybe handful, of things you want to do each day, you are much better able to move the needle and actually accomplish more. Number 11 Antifragile by Nassim Taleb. Antifragile is the most controversial book on this list of best financial freedom books because it more so lays out the author's views on what makes things thrive during times of high uncertainty or times of stress. For example, when you exercise, you are putting stress on your body, but it adapts to that and grows and improves. How this applies to us is to take adequate financial safety measures to make sure we can withstand a negative downturn, such as 2022 or 2008 with traditional Wall Street investing, while at the same time be able to capture any potential upside. So, the question is, which book should you read if you are just starting out on your journey towards financial freedom? I'll recommend reading Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, as it contains so many core financial and mindset principles. In the words of Ryan Holiday, one of my favorite authors, it's a quake book, in that it shakes you to your core and makes you think about things in a completely different way. Learn more at 40plusfinance.com.